Oh, there we go. All right, now we're in business. All right, you'll hear the song getting going on here in just a moment.
And now, the most trusted name in radio, serving the Treasure Coast for over 30 years, Rhett Palmer, the mayor of the airwaves.
And it's a good morning. How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? On the line this morning, I have David Hunter, former U.S. diplomat to South Korea, Spain, Pakistan, India, and Ukraine.
Hey, good for you. Nice to be here, Rhett.
Oh, brother, I tell you what, if I had to get through college again, I don't know if I could do it. But anyway, it's good to have you here today. Summertime. It's been a hot summer down there in Florida. A lot going on. I saw a picture of, I guess what do they call the premier or whatever he is of India, holding hands, walking with Putin, which disturbed me. And then they met with, is it Xi? That's how you say the name of the president of China. And then Rocket Man was going to show up on the scene. And I believe there's one other culprit that was there. I'm getting worried because it reminds me of when Hitler met with Stalin and set everything up. I'm wondering, are we on the precipice of World War III? But right now we're going to discuss the fact that they're having some sort of an event, right, an anniversary military parade celebrating the end of World War II. And this is the president of China?
Yeah. This is a big deal. They just finished something called the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization conference, and that was where President Modi was participating. And you saw Modi with Putin, and you saw Modi with Xi at that. And I want to talk about that a little bit. But also today, Xi is holding a huge parade, military parade, for the anniversary of the end of World War II in Asia. And that includes Putin is there, and Kim Jong-un, he came over in his armored train from North Korea, and he's there, and they're sitting on the podium watching all these endless displays of new Chinese weapons, which is also rather shocking. So we've got two different things to talk about regarding that particular episode, and one is India and Modi and his apparent cozying up to Putin and to Xi, and we thought that India was our ally. And then the other thing is the military parade and especially the display of military arms. So which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, first of all, I do want to say this about India. Well, yeah, we're supposed to be friends, but of course, Trump has raised up the tariffs, and everybody's been having a big party, charging us tariffs throughout the years, and no one's been willing to stand up and say, hey, you're going to charge tariffs, then we're going to charge you tariffs, and which has inhibited these other countries from buying American products.
Yeah, well, the tariffs thing is interesting regarding India, and you're right that is part of what has Modi upset with Trump at the moment. Now, I served in India, and I know Indian politics pretty well, and the international relations of India. So I'll try to explain to you and the audience a little bit about that. India traditionally was always a close ally of Russia over the years. They still have most of their military equipment supplied by Russia. The stuff they don't make by themselves is Russian. So they're very dependent.
This alliance is not new.
No, the alliance of India and Russia has been around for a long time. Now, we have, over the last 20 or 30 years, we have tried to encourage India to move away from Russia dependence. And they have. And we've had a successful building of a friendship of U.S. and Indian relations. Modi was at the White House just a while back, and so we've built a steady, brick by brick, improving of relations with India. And India is a big country. It's now become, I think, like the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world, and it's maybe the 2nd largest by population, right after China. Has over 1 billion people. So it's an important country. Now the U.S., its strategy was, well, we want to make relations with India in order to build a firewall around China. That's the idea. And China and India were traditionally not good neighbors. They didn't. They had some skirmishes, border skirmishes, because they border each other, and you had fights going on just in a couple of years ago. That there was some troops on Indian and Chinese sides fighting each other right on the border. What's more concerning than India's being friendly with Russia is India being friendly with China, and this is really, goes back to Xi and his skillful diplomacy. He is now siding with India and saying, well, Trump is bullying India and China, trying to force both India and China to stop buying oil from Russia. And this is the equation. Russia supplies about 40% of India's oil and about 40% of China's oil and gas. Huge amounts for both countries. And in fact, those two countries are basically funding Putin's war in Ukraine and other activities by buying all this oil and gas from.
So Trump wants to put the stronghold and squeeze Putin's neck by diminishing his sales of oil to these two huge nations, and that will keep him from being able to build the equipment to keep this ridiculous.
Well, that's the strategy. That's in theory. That's the strategy. Let's ask India and demand India and China cut off buying oil and gas from Russia. Now the problem is it ain't working, and what's happening instead is that India and China are growing closer to Russia, and they're growing closer to each other. So this sanction policy of threatening tariffs. Trump is threatening to impose 50% tariffs on India. That's a lot.
What have they been charging us all these years?
Well, that's a different matter. If you're looking at basic trade balance relations and rates of charge and so forth, that's a different equation. But that's not what Trump's doing. Trump is imposing secondary tariffs against India for its audacity in buying Russian oil. Now, at least I'm making a joke when I say audacity, because the Indians don't see it that way. The Indians say, I've got an economy I have to run. Russia has quick and cheap oil that I need, and I'm going to take it. I'm going to buy it. And
why don't they buy it from us?
Well, that's a good offer. If Trump would come in and say, I will match barrel for barrel at a price equal to what Russia is selling you, then you'd be in a reasonable position where you would be at least offering something to India. But he hasn't done that. And I don't know if he can do that, because Putin is selling at below market rates to these countries.
Well,
that's
how
why
does he do that? There's a certain expense in harvesting all this oil.
It's not below cost of production. It's below market rates. Market rate for a barrel of oil is probably about $60 a barrel.
I noticed that a lot that's going on right now with the economy being as tough as it is in the United States. You go into some stores and they're outrageous the price. You go to Hobby Lobby. When I go to Hobby Lobby, which is Christian owned and operated, things are priced to move. They're making us go, okay, this, we can get $8 for this. We'll sell it for $5. Well, I wouldn't pay $8, but I will pay $5 or $7 or $6 or whatever,
Well, and to some extent, the cheapness of the Russian oil is an attraction. It's kind of drawing flies to honey, and both China and India need a lot of carbohydrate fuels. So they're happy to get this from Russia. Now the problem is that this is building on what I call a broader concept of what you'd call the non-aligned nations, or the what you call the global South, or the non-U.S. dominated pact, that whatever you want to call it, that where China and Russia and India are all falling into place. That's why this Shanghai Cooperation Organization has been running for 25 years, but it's really starting to pick up speed now, and that is a tool for what I call a Chinese-led dominance of anti-Americanism. Think of it that way. And anti-Americanism not in the sense of anti-democratic, but anti-U.S. hegemonic power. We are seen by a lot of the world as the big bully, the guy that can force others to do its will. And
which has probably always been the case, but when you have someone like Trump, who's very blatant about that power and of exercising it, it's you know.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's style. It's the style of the bullying. I mean, there's always been this concept of speak softly but carry a big stick. Well, unfortunately, Trump isn't speaking softly. He's got the big stick, but he's also yelling. He's yelling what he wants people to do, and this is, in a way, it's abrasive to the leaders that don't think that they're under his thumb, and so we are running a risk here of something happening in terms of a global realignment of non-friendly countries, like you said. You know, Iran is in that batch. You've got a lot of North Korea. Let's go to the military parade and talk about that for a minute. The most shocking thing about this military parade is that it displayed all of China's new weapons. Now, China is a growing economic power. It's the second largest GDP in the world, and it is becoming more and more high-tech, as you know. And what they showed on the parade included a variety of hypersonic missiles, unmanned jet fighters that can fly as robots alongside manned fighters as squadrons. So you basically can have one guy flying in a jet, and he's got, you know, a whole squadron behind him of robots that are flying in formation and can maneuver and attack and fight and do everything a pilot can do. Then you have unmanned submarines. They showed them. They had them small, you know, they weren't Polaris, but they were pretty good sized submarines that were on display, unmanned, and they have unmanned patrol boats for naval exercises. You know, we've seen that with Ukraine, very successful, using drone boats to blow up ships. And then the last thing I know you're going to be interested in is they had on trucks huge mounted lasers, and the lasers are designed to counter or shoot down drone swarms. So you've got the idea of, you know, sending out 50 drones in a bunch and overwhelming a target. Well, these things are designed as lasers to shoot those down. So this is going to be putting the Pentagon into what I call panic mode because of the amount of new weapons that are being displayed probably for the first time. It's certainly a show-off of China's power, China's military power. And, you know, when you combine China and Russia's not the most high-tech, but they've got, you know, fairly extensive production of weapons and a lot of depth in their capacity. So, you know, that's a pretty strong and dangerous bunch. Now, going back to India, one last thing about India and Modi. Modi lives in a rough neighborhood. He's right up there on the border with Russia and on the border with China, and he may want to please the United States, but he has to keep his neighbors in a reasonably friendly fashion, and therefore I can't really blame Modi for the position that he's taking. He's taking what I call a neutral, non-aligned. All of you are sort of my friends and potential threats. So he's doing his best to navigate through, that bunch of landmines. I'm not going to be real critical of Modi at this point for double-crossing us because, the U.S. has not been a faithful ally itself in many cases. So, and in this case, India is a new ally of America. So we should try to, reconsider these sanctions against India, or as you suggested, let's give them the barrels of oil at the same price that they're getting it from Russia. If they're going to be told to cut off Russian supplies and alienate a neighbor in their neighborhood, at least make it worth their while. So we'll call that the Rhett Palmer Initiative.
Hello.
Looks like we lost you for a second there, Rhett. I think we got you back.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I was just saying that we should probably not alienate the Indians. So we could actually, as you suggested, maybe we should supply the Indians with oil and gas from the United States at the same price they're getting it from Russia, so that they're not going to be, running around with an energy shortage, and that's a big energy shortage. They import, as I said, 40% of their energy is coming from Russia, India. That's a lot. So if you cut that off, where are they going to get it, and how much is it going to cost them?
Have you been talking the whole time that I was gone?
I don't know how long you've been gone.
I was gone for about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I've been talking that whole time. I thought
that's
you were
good.
listening.
No, they cut me off and I couldn't get back on. I don't know what happened, but
Oh, okay. Well, as long as the audience out there hears it, that's important.
That's okay. It's kind of funny. I had a guy. I remember one time I was up in Canada doing an interview, and it was when we had this modern equipment. When you called in, it sounded like a fax machine, and it would go, and then you'd be on. Well, I was on with this doctor down in Texas, and I got cut off, and so it took me about 3 minutes to get back on. The whole time he was down there just talking away. Just like
the talking away is providing valuable information. As I mentioned,
right.
I'll do a quick recap on just one part of it, and that's the Chinese military parade showed the amazing amount of new weapons the Chinese are coming up with. Hypersonic missiles, unmanned jets that can fly in squadrons along with manned jets.
So are they trying to intimidate USA? Of course.
Well, they have probably got the Pentagon shaking in their boots right now, is what I'm saying, because the amount of new weapons and the innovative types. They've got unmanned submarines, unmanned patrol boats, and they have laser mounted on trucks to counter drone swarms. And they displayed all that during this parade.
Well, who was that? Who was that guy that was the prophet from long ago? Not maybe a God's prophet, but a prophet. He could see into the future. And he said, the guy I'm talking about, right? The famous prognosticator.
Yeah, all right, whatever.
Doesn't matter. But anyway, he said, the eagle shall take the bear, which would mean we are the eagle, Russia's the bear, but the dragon shall prevail over all. And, of course, we know China is the dragon. And, the Chinese are just absolutely, it's amazing. So you're saying they have unmanned submarines.
Yes, and unmanned jets.
And of course, we're sitting asleep with all these liberals in the past who have been running our country, and they haven't been funding the military.
Well, the U.S. has been funding. We spend more on our military than any country in the world. In fact, we spend more than.
Then why are we behind China? Why are we behind China?
Because China is focused on what they're doing, and we are not. That's the problem. That raises a very interesting question, because it's not money. It's how you spend your money and how targeted you are at what you're trying to accomplish. For example, Xi has been laser focused on artificial intelligence for years. I talked about that on the show probably 8 years ago. Most Americans including the military, were not very keyed in on artificial intelligence back then. Until the computer beat the human at the chessboard, that was the first time people woke up and realized, my God, maybe this artificial intelligence means something. You remember that? They had an IBM computer that beat Garry Kasparov at chess. He was the chess master, world chess master.
Well, what worries me now is in the music industry, they just produced a song. It took 2.5 minutes for AI to create it. It's a fantastic song.
Yeah.
And what worries me is that, I want to hear Bob Dylan because he's been in the dumps and down in the valley like I have. I'm afraid that our younger generation is so superficial, they won't care if a machine is making the music as long as they can jump up and down and sing along with it. But the only thing is, I think if you hear a love song, don't you want to know somebody's been through the same trouble you've been through? But I don't know. And what worries me is, of course, I spent my life cultivating my skills as a songwriter.
Right.
And now it means that all this work I've done is of naught.
Well, a lot of people are going to find that the work they've done is of naught because you're going to have AI and robotics replacing workers in all capacities, including lawyers, people that go to law school, and people that are certified accountants. They're all going to be replaced by computers. Their skill sets can easily be reproduced with the highly intelligent computers that are now coming out.
Well, sure, because they can tell you, okay, Mr. Palmer, you made this amount of profit, but if you are willing to dodge paying taxes by putting it in this investment or this or that, you won't have to, because they know everything.
Yeah. Well, the point is that when you go back to this issue of the Chinese military parade, the Chinese are, for whatever justification, they are leaping ahead in many categories of military strength. And the United States still is the strongest country, but China is coming up fast. And this parade, this 80th anniversary parade, should be a wake-up call.
Well, I'll tell you something. I mean, I'm just a light study here, but Kmart was doing fine, and they were ruling as far as department stores and just exploding. And I thought, well, there'll never be anything like a Kmart again. And then Sam Walton wrote in his book that he said it would take us at least 8 to 10 years to catch up to Kmart.
Yeah.
Well, they surpassed Kmart in a couple of years because Kmart got fat and happy and fell asleep. And then Walmart got fat and happy and fell asleep. And then Amazon came up, and Amazon jumped. When you think about buying something online, I don't think about Walmart first. The franchise in my mind is purchased by Amazon. And it so happens here, we've been sleeping at the wheel. We're fat and happy. We're a young, arrogant, rich nation. And here China has sharpened her hunger pangs. So they're moving ahead. And what worries me is that will they prevail and take over the world? And will the Antichrist come out of China?
Yeah, well, let's not combine those two features. One is theological, and the other one is a political reality. China has an ambition to become at least the leader of what I call a alternative to the American hegemony. The Americans are seen
what's that word mean?
Hegemony, hegemon, someone who is kind of the big bully that pushes everybody around and can tell everybody what to do. That's called hegemonic power.
Well, you don't have free will to speak in China, but people there who are living their little, regular lives, mediocre lives, are very happy with the way things are going there. And
yeah, they for the most part, obviously the economic prosperity and the military power. See, the Chinese feel proud when they see this big parade and that their leaders have got other big, powerful countries like China and North Korea and others, also powerful warlord types, coming to them, paying obsequiousness, showing genuflecting to the great leader of China. So that gives them, because Chinese had what I call 100 years of collapse, and they felt their pride was destroyed after the imperial dynasty fell apart, and they were subject to the rule of the European colonialists, the British and the French and Germans and Russians. All of these imperialist powers were taking over China. So China's very proud to be back, and back as a united, fairly strong country. They don't have the kind of internal weaknesses that, for example, Russia has. Russia is also an imperial country. There's actually been I've had some discussions in the past about how Russia is actually an artificial country. It is really an empire that is an assemblage of a bunch of different nations.
Who is?
Russia today.
Yeah.
The USSR was a collection of countries, including Russia. But Russia itself is an empire. If you go back to the 1500s, the 1600s, there wasn't a Russia. There was something called the Principality of Moscow, Muscovites, the Muscovite princes. And then they started expanding mostly to the Far East and took over different areas as they spread all the way and eventually got to Alaska. Remember, Trump met with Putin in Alaska, and that was, of course, kind of a coup for Putin. I want to revisit that for a minute. That was a coup for Putin because, it shows how far Russia had expanded. He was back in his own home country in Alaska. And yes, the Russians sold it to to the United States. But it kind of reminded people of the great imperial power of Russia, that it could extend all the way to Alaska in North America. So that was a real coup for Putin, and he got to ride in the beast. Remember, he was sitting in the car next to Trump. And
yippity-doo-dah-day.
Yeah, well, the symbolism there was you're not a pariah. Russia, according to the visuals, being met on a red carpet and
you know what, David, I just am not a man of this world, because how can you embrace him? What is with this Putin? He's killing children and moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas every day. Look at this guy Netanyahu. I mean, I was on the phone last night with my lifelong friend, Jewish friend, Howie, and we're talking about Netanyahu. And this is a nightmare for PR for Israel, because regardless, okay, they maybe had a right to defend themselves, but the way all these children and people are dying, compassion has to come ahead of everything. I mean, what the hell is going on in this world?
No, I agree with you, and I think that a lot of people agree with you in this point of, let's get back to our basic roots and say, the killing of children, and that's what Putin's doing too. He's firing these drones and missiles.
It's like he doesn't even care.
Shortly after he met with Trump, he refused to do the ceasefire that Trump originally had come in asking for in Ukraine. He refused that. And then afterwards, he launched some of the biggest missile and drone attacks he's ever made against the Ukrainians.
Now, was I on the phone with you last night, or somebody else who said that Putin has been playing? I was with somebody that was very adamant that Putin's been playing Trump.
Well, I've been saying that for a while, and unfortunately, I think Trump understands that now. He's showing some shall we say, disillusionment with Putin, and realizing that Putin is a liar, and you can't trust a word out of his mouth.
He's been a liar for years. He said he wasn't going to go into Ukraine. Look what he did, killing all these children and women and moms and dads. What the hell? It's amazing that in life, and I will say this on behalf of stupidity, I myself for years said, oh, it looks like a skunk, smells like a skunk, walks like a skunk, talks like a skunk, but nah, he's got to be a good person because I'm a good person inside. And you know what? If it looks like a skunk and talk, Putin is an absolute bona fide horrendous liar. He's a murderer, and yet he has this calm face. I don't understand what is he? A guy like him in his position of power could leave this world behind. He could leave with nobility, that he did some great things. What's he going to leave with? Look at Stalin. Do you think anybody ever thinks about Stalin? Stalin was a creep of all creeps.
Yeah, well, Putin admires Stalin. Putin admires Stalin, and there are people, lots of people in Russia that admire Stalin.
Well, you and I have both been to Russia.
Yeah.
Now, I can't explain this to people on a spiritual level. I may be weak as far as a man of this world, but I am a man of God's world. And when I was there, I felt like I was in St. Petersburg, and I remember seeing a lady sweeping the sidewalk on a Sunday, and it almost was like there was no color. It was all black and white. When I drove into Moscow, I flew into Moscow and then drove into Moscow, and it was all nothing but ugly cement buildings, no homes, not a home could I see. And it's
Yeah, that's the Soviet. You had that song you used to
it's a
sing on
long,
the show.
it's yeah,
a billion babushka tears. I remember that.
It's a long, yeah, I write something wherever I go. It's a long ride to Moscow, seemed like 1,500 years, with 10 million concrete apartments and a billion babushka tears. I saw the ghost of Stalin standing, not even death lived in his eyes. The sun was melting the horizon, and freedom was on the rise. At least
Well, that was when you were there. There was a slight glimmer of hope in the post-Gorbachev era with Mr. Yeltsin, especially, where everybody thought Russia was going to come out of that dark nightmare and develop into a friendly, democratic, peace-loving nation. And unfortunately, Putin and the KGB maneuvered to take over from Yeltsin. That was right about the time I was in Ukraine in 1999 and 2000. And Putin got into the office by Yeltsin was a bit of a crook. He and his family were called a mafia family because they were profiteering, not big but enough. And Putin promised Yeltsin, if you put me in as president, I guarantee the first thing I'll do is give you immunity from prosecution. And he did. That was his first act, was to grant Yeltsin immunity from criminal prosecution for his stealing from the state. And so Putin is a criminal. He got in as a criminal. He's in a criminal conspiracy from the day one. So that's who we're dealing with. But, he's now an ally of Xi, and you have the North Koreans in there, sending troops in to help Putin fight in Ukraine, to try to overthrow Ukraine. I'll mention one last thing on that, and then we should probably move on to this thing about Palestine and Israel and the recognition of Palestine. The last thing is the sending of troops from North Korea and weapons from Iran. So what you've got is kind of a cooperation agreement between all these bad countries, North Korea dictatorship, Iran, the mad mullahs, helping Russia, and being backed to some extent by China. We don't know how much China is helping Russia except for buying oil. My guess is that they're providing Russia with some high technology to help in the war against Ukraine. So they're not democratic countries, let's put it that way. But the United States is losing in what they call the PR war. These countries are seen as offering a more moderate alternative to the U.S. bullying style. So, bullying doesn't go down very well around the world. And unfortunately, that's the reputation Trump has, is being, the world's foremost bully. And I think, we'll ride through this. I'm not worried that we can't come out the other end, but because I don't think Trump is going to change his style.
Okay. Let's move on, because we got other things out there. I want to talk about the United Kingdom, France, and now Belgium are going to recognize Palestine in the next week's UN General Assembly. What's the reason for them doing this, and where is Palestine going to be officially?
Yeah, well, this is an interesting point, because Palestine is still considered to be a non-state member of the United Nations. At first it was called a non-state observer, and then it was upgraded to a non-state member. Now, recognizing Palestine as a state does not change its status in the United Nations, because one country is going to veto making Palestine a member state, and that is the United States. The U.S. has consistently sided with Israel. It's been Israel's most loyal ally, and blocking a Palestinian state. They're claiming, the U.S. traditionally claims, we will recognize Palestine as a state in the United Nations as part of a agreement that Israel and Palestine make to create a two-state solution. That's a very important term.
But that was offered to Arafat. Why didn't Arafat accept that?
Okay, let's not go back there. Let's go forward. The forward is a two-state solution. Now, under Benjamin Netanyahu and his crowd, the conservatives, what they call the Zionist conservatives, they have essentially poo-pooed any concept of a two-state solution. They have said there ain't going to be a two-state solution with Palestine existing as a sovereign state. It's not going to happen. And what Netanyahu's doing right now with his push into Gaza City, which is one of the last remaining large areas of Gaza that has not yet been totally destroyed and has 1 million people living there. That's where he's going right now with his IDF troops. And the idea is that he and Smotrich and Ben Gvir are saying, once we have wiped out all of the Palestinians from Gaza, we're going to move into Gaza with our own redevelopment plan. And it's going to actually be supported by Donald Trump and Jared Kushner. That's what they're saying. And in reality, they're right, because Donald Trump and Jared Kushner just met in the White House with some of these Israeli leaders like Ron Dermer and a guy named Michael Eisenberg, who is a Israeli venture capitalist and high-tech guy. And they have come up with a plan for Gaza called the Great Plan, G-R-E-A-T, Great Plan. And it's designed by Mr. Eisenberg and with the support of Mr. Dermer, both hard-right Zionist Israelis. It is designed by them for essentially moving all of the Palestinians out of Gaza, giving them $5,000 each to just move away, maybe to Sudan or Somalia or somewhere. And then Trump and Jared and their friends can build a new artificial intelligence designed group of cities of the future in Gaza with golf courses and resorts and beaches. So that's the plan. And that's what, unfortunately, Netanyahu is now saying. Donald Trump has urged him to reject the ceasefire that's now on the table. The Hamas has offered a 60-day ceasefire. And Benjamin Netanyahu is saying, well, I can't do that because Donald Trump doesn't want me to. Donald Trump wants me to reject a partial ceasefire and to finish the job so that he can build his gleaming city, his AI-designed cities on the hill. So, I don't know if Trump really is aware that he is being used as the excuse to reject a ceasefire and the saving of starving Palestinian children and stop the bombing and destruction of Palestinian cities. I don't know if Trump is aware that he is being used by Netanyahu as the principal excuse to keep going with his war. It's troubling to me. I personally think that Trump is not that cruel. He doesn't really want the kind of destruction that has, as you've said, it's brought Netanyahu and Israel's reputation down into the toilet. Right now, the whole world is looking at mass starvation caused by Israel and even war crimes clearly, and that's why you're seeing UK, France, and Belgium recognizing Palestine. Germany has imposed an arms embargo on German weapons going to Israel if they're being used in Gaza. That's what Germany's doing. So, the whole world is now turning against Israel. And what Israel's doing is its defense is it's saying, well, the whole world is anti-Semitic. They just don't like Jews. That's baloney. That's not true. It's that what Israel under Netanyahu is doing is so revolting. That's why people are criticizing Israel. They're not criticizing Jews. They're not criticizing Semitic. They're criticizing Netanyahu and what his cruel policies are. That's the difference.
Well, so President Trump, you're saying President Trump is suggesting Netanyahu should just finish the war quickly?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what.
Let me ask you something. Now, see. I mean, if you, my whole thing has been, if you have a little bit of cancer, if the doctor, you went to the doctor, said, well, we're going to take out 75% of your cancer. What? And we'll just take a chance with you dying from the other 25%. You're going to say, no. I want you to take all the cancer out. Well, I mean, this all started a couple of years ago with the attack on Israel soil, and so, I don't know.
I understand your point. The problem is, and see, this is the thing. This idea that you're going to take out all the cancer. The only way you're going to take out all the cancer is to kill the patient. That's the only way you're going to get all the cancer out. The cancer. We all, believe it or not, everyone this is my understanding, everyone in the world has some tiny amounts of cancer floating around in their body. However, they have an immune system that fights off that cancer.
I know, but I'm using this. Let's not get off on that. This is an analogy.
Yeah,
and the analogy. The analogy.
Anyway, let me use this.
Let me finish here.
Okay.
So King Saul was told by God to go in and kill. Now here I have a loving God, and I'm going to tell you I have personally had contact with an eternal.
I know the Amalekites.
Let me finish. With the Amalekites. So now I don't understand. God says my ways are not your ways. Now he tells Saul to go in and kill the Amalekites, the women, the children, all the animals and everything. Saul disobeys God and loses his kingship and his anointing by God because of it. I was surprised, as I told you. I mean, they should have done this a long time ago. I mean, they should have just cleared this whole thing up a long time ago.
As I mentioned to you in our earlier biblical discussions, the Amalekites are direct descendants of Esau. Esau was the brother
and God said that he's going to be like a jackass, a kicking jackass, and he said if you don't take care of the Amalekites, they will be a thorn in the side to Israel forever. That's what the prophet said, and sure enough, that is what's happened. It's just like allowing, every time I see people hanging out, I tell children, I tell parents, bad companionship ruins good character. And I'll tell you what, if you think you're going to change somebody, 9 out of 10 times, 99 out of 100 times, people will bring you down rather than bring you up. Do not hang out with bad people. You think you're going to save them?
This policy that you're suggesting, using Saul as an example of annihilating anyone in your neighborhood that you feel is a threat. That's the problem with Israel today. Israel is moved into a neighborhood full of Arabs, by the way. The place was full of Arabs. The Jews, there were less than 50,000 Jews back in the 1920s when Israel first started bringing Jews in from the Ashkenazis in from Eastern Europe and so forth. They were not a lot of Jews in the Middle East. And so what happens is you bring in all these Jews, and then you turn around and say that everybody that's not Jewish is an Arab enemy, and you don't end up having security. You have more and more conflict. So, the attitude, I think the attitude has to be one of peace and harmony as opposed to occupation and settlement. And that's the problem. Right now, just last week, Israel proposed taking over what's called the E2 area of the West Bank, which is just near Jerusalem, and saying we're going to build settlements in that E2 area, and we're going to occupy that area and annex it to Israel. When you take over areas that are currently having Arabs living there and just say, they're not yours, get out of here, I'm taking it. And that's what Smotrich and Gvir have been saying. They have been saying that the West Bank, the West Bank is not the West Bank. It is Judea and Samaria. It was given by God, and any Arab that's living there should get out. That's what they're saying.
Listen, we are out of time for today.
Okay.
I don't know what the only solution I can possibly come up with. I don't even understand my Father in heaven. I don't understand all this. His ways are not my ways. All I can say is I'm just going to keep praying, but, whatever.
All right. Anyway, it was a good discussion, Rhett. I enjoy your neutrality and perseverance and being a follower of faith. So
I love people. I love the Jews. I love the Arabs. I love everybody. Yeah. But anyway, so we're going to have to say goodbye for now. And the Patriotic Patriot Church is coming up, and I'll talk to you next week. Same place, same station.
Sounds good. Bye.
Okay.